No, really, I don't think I've read so much on Habitat 3 than I did last night, 11 hours. Balashi had other problem, but I had the children and I think to look after. What I'm going to do very, very quickly is this, that one of the biggest advantage was this, that we have three Habitat 3 agenda, not one. We have International Habitat Agenda, which came out from Quito. We have very beautifully presented India Habitat 3 report by Government of India, very well written and presented. And of course, we had our own civil society agenda, which we ourselves put together. So I don't think we're going to kind of search for what civil society says. We already have put it together in beautiful 6 pages. Now what I'm going to do is this, because I have just few minutes, I would very quickly go through all the 3, but not the agenda, but what one feels about them very quickly. Now, see, one thing which I learned last evening is this, that normally speaking, when I'm not prepared, when I talk about it, I become very critical. But because I had this advantage of reading everything, I think all the 3 are very good documents, have lots of strength. And not that you can't criticize, but they have a huge amount of things. Now, so far the global agenda is concerned, there were 170 countries involved. There was national, subnational, global processes behind it. There's a multi-level, multi-tier, multi-headed participation in doing this. We had engagement of all kind of stakeholders in doing it. We had wide range of thought processes, multimedia operations going on. We have quite active secretariat, which was taking it out, I think all the time. And we had considerable interest generated all along. Now, all this put together, and a process lasting for over about year and a half, 2, has produced the global agenda. So it really has strength. You can't run away from it. Having said that, and as I said that I have to run very fast, I just thought there are 4 or 5 things which I thought required to be looked into in the context of India. What are the main concerns? One is obviously what comes out from such meeting all the time, that is the lowest common denominator. Anything which is really, I think, created to make everyone happy cannot be very good, because that is a problem. Lowest common denominator can never produce the quality product. And therefore, it's also part of that problem that it's a lowest common denominator product. Second thing is this, it is essentially a statement of intent and intentions. It's deeply aspirational as you look at everyone who wanted to see what will happen in 20 years have talked about that. It's good on what, but not very good on how. This is being talked about all the time. Third thing is this, that it almost neglects the rural sector, almost. Its new urban agenda, name itself is new urban agenda, which really means it talks about, I think urbanization, talk about future, it talks about trends. It doesn't talk about, I think, overpowering reality, especially overpowering reality in our part of the world, in Asia. We already have, even though we are talking about half the world as rural, in our context, still is about 68-70% rural, and therefore it's a big disadvantage. And in our presentation, we have tried to correct it. Third thing is this, that, and this I think is very important, that unlike the Paris negotiations, the climate change negotiation, which had greater seriousness, which had commitments to be honored, which had implementation timetable, which had global, regional, national instrumentalities to be created, it had a town-bound program. This one is rather loose compared to that particular one, and therefore it's quite rhetorical in many ways. And I think accountability in that particular context, in that particular environment, is a little less. Fifth thing is, people talk about this being a neoliberal agenda. Too much emphasis on market and private sector. Resource mobilization strategy finance mobilization strategy is not very clear, even though it's talked about as weak. And facilitating finance is not as strong as has been, I think, in the Paris meeting. The sixth point is, it's a 20-year cycle. Now, 20-year cycles in 1976, when Habitat first happened, was okay. Urbanization is so fast now that talking about 20-year cycle makes it, questionable. And on issues like informal sector, in widening and deepening inequality, in terms of dealing with poverty, dealing with the huge issue of employment generation, livelihood, and jobs and income, on issues of slums, it's not very innovative. It's talked about what has been talked about. And it accepts the role of technology transfer, but mechanisms are not too strong. So this is a very quickly, how much time I've taken? Okay. So this is the first global one, very quickly. It took us a long time, but I'll just do it very, very quickly. Coming to the Indian one. It's very impressive. I don't know if anyone has seen it. I read every word it last night, and it's very, very impressive, very well done, very well written. It talks about a couple of things, and I think this is very important. It first accepts urbanization's role as singularly important transformational role in urbanization. It accepts that, talks about it, sort of thing. It talks about its nature, says 79 million people become 428, will become 606 million people. It talks about, that in the number we have a huge problem. And it talks about the structural change that has taken place in the context of urbanization. It talks about 60% of GDP being generated in the cities. There's one part. Second part it talks about is this, that it talks about challenges that urbanization presents of a very noticeable proportions. And in form of demand and supply gap in housing, in infrastructure, and services. It also talks about urban governance and fiscal systems have also lagged very much behind. This is an interesting statement. And it has not really dealt with the complexities that urbanization poses now. And then it comes out and states very clearly, to solve all these problems of complexities, all the problems of number, we have 6 agenda. It talks about smart city, talks about Amrit, talks about housing for all, Hriday, rural urban mission, and Swachh Bharat, the 6 things. Interestingly enough, entire document doesn't talk about 7th thing at all. All the time it talks about the 6, which really says it's a very interesting thing. And this is important for us, that in the context of dealing with urbanization, its complexities, its problems, these are the 6 major instruments that we have. And this is the context of what we'll probably talk about tomorrow. It also, interestingly, says these 2 things, that in order to realize that this is a complex problem, in the concept of what is cooperative federalism, it has devolved resources, that 42% of the resources is going to the state government, and 5% of the resources also are devolved and earmarked for urban local bodies. So there is a capacity building. So this, in a nutshell, is the picture of national. It's not correct, it's not a full picture, but some picture. But to me, the most important document is the document that we produce, the civil society. And it says a number of things. One thing it says is this, and I think I really want to take 1 more minute if she allows. It says that,
2 more, please.
Okay. It says that Uh, Look, it says that civil society is a very, very complex entity. And it's very hard to put it together in one definition, in one hall, in one document. And therefore, there's a great need to recognize this diversity. And whatever you produce is never going to satisfy everyone. And I think that's a very interesting statement about the work we did. Second thing it says is this, and I think it's very important in preamble, that this particular process we started last year, it's not that it started last year, but something we emphasize on, is a process of getting people and agencies and professionals and civil society organs together. And we've got to do it more with more people, more commitment, greater concern, greater regularity. It believes that it has a huge process content. And we've got to emphasize that. And third thing that is said, and I'm very glad we said that so far we are concerned, civil society is concerned, Habitat 3 doesn't end with Quito. It will continue beyond. And this particular meeting, and a meeting that happened last month, and meeting will happen beyond this meeting, essentially is a part of fulfilling that commitment, that we would continue working. Now, having said that, there are 5 points I want to analyze, I want to emphasize. Can I sit down and do that? Sure. Can I do that? Okay. So the 7-point thing that came out, I personally feel civil society document that came out from Delhi meeting is a very, very powerful statement in the context of India's urbanization challenge. And I'm not saying that because we put it together, we talked about it, we wrote it. It is because it understands beautifully. And I'm not saying Sarkar does not understand. I'm saying it succinctly brings out what are the key elements of challenge. First is, it says, recognize rural reality in urbanizing India. Yes, we are urbanizing. Yes, we are 31%. Yes, we are 377 million. But don't forget, there are 630,000 villages and 900 million people there. Yes, process is there. Yes, trends are in that direction. But today, we cannot forget that reality. It must be dealt with, handled, and not only makes a statement, it makes a specific suggestion to United Nations, to Government of India, that if you have spent 20 years to arrive at understanding and design an urban agenda for the world, an urban agenda for the country, we should have another assembly in 2 or 3 years' time in order to develop a rural agenda. We can't wait 20 years. We require a parallel process so that it happens. So this is a very interesting, it talks about number one. Number two, and I'll say the large number of nuances I can't really go into. Number two, second important thing which talks about, which none of the other thing talks about, is the whole aspect of employment. The demographic dividend Prime Minister talks about all the time. We in India have 800 million people under the age of 35. They are once entering the job market. This country needs 220 million jobs in the next 15 to 18 years' time. We're talking about million jobs a month, and we create something like 30 to 40,000 jobs a month. And if this doesn't happen, we know Naxalism is right around the corner. And therefore, the role of urbanization, urban India, in the context of job creation is something we emphasize very strongly in the context of this thing. Third thing we are talking about is promoting inclusive and equitable development. And this, if you look at this document, it has 6 or 7 paragraphs, but it talks about all kind of inclusivity. It talks about poor, it talks about homeless, it talks about disabled, it talks about marginalized, it talks about everything. His definition of inclusivity is very beautiful. I don't have time to go into this because there are 6 remarkably well-written paragraphs. I'll just jump them. Fourth thing is foster urban sustainability, and this is very important, at least in the Indian context. That so far India is concerned, so far its millions are concerned, we couldn't be satisfied by saying that we'll put solar panels on our terraces and we'll become sustainable. It's a nonsense. We don't understand the nature and the context of our sustainable challenge. And therefore, in the Indian context, if you're talking about sustainability, we've got to understand the deeper meaning of sustainability. Sustainability in the context of consumption, sustainability in the context of how we live, sustainability in the context of how we produce, deliver. And we've got to be talking about, and we are the only people on earth who talk about sustainability in the context of religion, in the context of culture, in the context of value system, in the context of all that. We have all that available. And therefore, we have a huge global responsibility in terms of playing a leadership role in the context of sustainable urbanization and therefore sustainable world. Fifth thing that this talks about is revisit urban planning and governance. Ours is archaic, ours is old, ours is non-functional, ours is wrong in every context. We've got to redo this. And the fourth thing, we've got to commit ourselves to do this forward. It says there has got to be a partnership. There has got to be equally valued partnership. We cannot depend on Sarkar alone. We can't depend on private sector alone. We require everything together in order to kind of understand and meet the complexity of the challenge that urban India poses us. Thank you very much.